morning. We're currently in Wapakoneta, Ohio at the Neil Armstrong Air and Space Museum. We're gonna go in and take a look, and we've never been here before, but we just watched the movie First Man last night, and we can't wait to get inside. Space race, born of war. An American-Soviet space race started on the World War II. After the war, the United States, the leader of Western democracy, and the Soviet Union, the leading communist nation, became bitter enemies. The two superpowers competed for influence around the world in what came to be known as the Cold War. In order to stay on top and to prove to the world that each was better than the other, the superpowers used rocket technologies acquired in World War II to begin the race to send a human into space. What? No. And here we have Neil Armstrong was a fighter pilot in Korea, and we have his flight jacket, and it'd be his headgear, and we have a model plane of the plane he flew in Korea, and his dress uniform. This is Neil Armstrong's Gemini 8 flight suit. This is the suit he wore on Gemini 8 when he was with David Scott, when they were trying to make the first dock with an unmanned spaceship. And if you've seen the movie, you know that they actually were successful, but there was a malfunction that caused them to undock, and their capsule started spinning. And this here is the actual Gemini 8 capsule that was commanded by Neil Armstrong with David Scott, that they used to dock to the Agena for the Gemini 8 mission. One of the tasks they had to perform before they could move on to the Apollo missions and go to the moon. Could you imagine being stuffed inside that for as long as they were? Alright, and this is the plan for the mission. The graphic illustrates the various steps in the lunar mission from launch to splashdown. NASA officially decided to use the lunar orbit rendezvous plan for landing the Apollo astronauts on the moon. Once the spacecraft ordered the moon, a small lunar module would be sent to the moon's surface with two astronauts. After exploring the moon, these astronauts would then take off from the lunar surface and rendezvous with the command service module still in orbit. The Saturn 1B, the workhorse. The early Apollo missions did not require the power of Saturn V. They relied on the Saturn 1B rocket. Apollo 7, which tested the command and service module, and later the Skylab mission relied on the Saturn 1B. Engineers grouped 8 of the H-1 rocket engines in the first stage of the Saturn 1B rocket. Each H-1 engine delivered 200,000 pounds of thrust. This would be the rocket that took them to the moon. the giant Saturn V rocket. Dwarfing all other Saturn rockets, the Saturn V was taller than a 36-story building and measured 33 feet in diameter at its base. The Saturn V, 3 boosters or rockets stacked on top of the other, making a single powerful rocket. The boosters fired in sequence and were then discarded in flight. Apollo 8 is all the following moon missions and Saturn V rocket to place the spacecraft into lunar orbit. And then over here, we have part of the rocket. And then we have a model of the Saturn V rocket. This here would be a model of the command module. The star charts. Photos of the lunar surface. Although everyone realized that someday space pilots would die, who would have thought that the first tragedy would be on the ground? Apollo 1 human tragedy. In January 1967, tragedy struck the crew of the Apollo 1 moon mission. Veteran astronaut Gus Grissom and Edward White and rookie Roger Chaffee lost their lives during a pre-flight test at Cape Kennedy. The astronauts were sitting in the command module. They were doing usual power tests. The fire suddenly filled the cabin. Poison gas suffocated the crew immediately. There was an investigation. Equipment changes were necessary, delaying the first manned Apollo flight by more than 18 months. Apollo 11, the astronauts were not singled out for any particular mission, but assigned according to their place in a rotating schedule. When NASA was ready to assign astronauts to the Apollo 11 mission, Neil Armstrong, Edwin, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins were next. Armstrong was chosen as commander of the mission. The world holds its breath with Michael Collins in orbiting spacecraft. Armstrong and Aldrin began their journey to the lunar surface in the Eagle. On seeing automobile-sized boulders and a huge crater at the original landing site, Armstrong was forced to change the landing site at the last moment. When the Eagle touched down, the astronauts had less than 30 seconds of fuel left. This is Neil Armstrong's backup suit, spacesuit for the Apollo. This is Neil Armstrong's backup suit. It weighs 190 pounds on Earth, but only 32 pounds on the moon. And this is one of the moon rocks that was brought up by Apollo 11. This lunar sample was collected in July 1969 by astronaut Neil A. Armstrong and Edwin E. Aldrin, Jr. It is composed of fragments from the moon's original crust, which is over 4 billion years old. Scientists call this type of rock vesicular basalt. The effects of gravity, because its smaller size and mass, the gravity of the moon is about 1/6 the gravity on Earth. This means that a person who weighs 180 pounds on Earth would only weigh 30 pounds if measured on the moon. That is why when the astronauts were on the moon, they were able to jump high even while wearing their heavy spacesuits. Feel the effect of the gravity on these bricks. So we'll test out. So the first one we're going to test out is the Earth, which is heavy. Now we have the Moon, which feels really light. And then this would actually be the second heaviest, would be Mars.
So do it, pick up breaks first, because you can feel the difference in how much they weigh.
Picked up a break before, but
Okay, so there's Earth, right?
yeah.
Now pick up Mars.
Mars.
That one and that one feel the same. You.
Neil Armstrong, private citizen. Neil Armstrong retired from NASA in 1971 to become a professor of engineering at the University of Cincinnati. Armstrong left teaching in late 1970s and served on the board of many corporations. He became directly involved in the space program in 1968 when he served as vice chairman of Rogers Commissions that investigated the Challenger disaster. Armstrong chats with people attending the Apollo 11 20th anniversary picnic in 1989, courtesy of NASA. Here's a picture of the space shuttle. And this is a lunar lander simulator, just like the simulator like what Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong would have did to land a lunar module. This would be what the controls look like actually in that lunar module. This is going to end our time at the Armstrong Air and Space Museum, and we will catch you on the next adventure.